Hey there and welcome back to Baldur's Gate 3. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of this honor mode walkthrough with our Dark Urge Halfling Bard Sylvia Hairyfoot. Last time we left off, after completing the Tiefling celebration here at our campsite, we spent a light-hearted night of fun and drinks, got to know some of our companions a bit more, and initiated yet another romance with Karlach. At this point then, we set our sights on the road ahead, a road that could either lead us through the mountain pass or through the Underdark. Now, of course, in true completionist fashion, I'll try to make sure that we see as much as possible of both of them. That is actually possible and in my opinion also very much recommended. To begin with though, the video title already spoiled it, we're starting with the Underdark. To that end, we have also assembled a squad that I usually would not go with. However, not only does it make sense for what comes next, it also gives us the unique, fun and absolutely pointless opportunity to roll out with 4 familiars. After the recent character changes made to Astarion, he can now summon one of his own. We'll go with the cat for now, but we can change this with each short rest. Gale, meanwhile, can summon a second shovel, and you can also see that he's wearing a new outfit. I decided to give him the robe of summer we acquired last episode. It looks better than the standard robes and resistance to cold damage could come in handy. I've also made changes to Shadowheart. The boots of striding will boost her concentration spells and she uses those quite frequently. As her melee weapon she's wielding Minotaurs cyanide for the use of fairy fire, and the Absolute's warboard also allows her a free cast of heroism. Finally, with Scratch's ball in her inventory she can also summon the dog, but not while we're in camp.
That orb seems powerful. What can it do once it's extracted?
Nothing good can come of it unless it is contained. Why?
It might be useful. Who knows?
After some banter between Gale and Astarion, we can now summon Scratch with Shadowheart, and just like that, we now technically have a party of 8 characters, although of course the usefulness of these summons is rather limited. Now to get going, we have one quick to-do here in the Druid Grove. Unfortunately, there are no new conversations we can have with any of the Druids, and the Tieflings have officially left and are on their way to Baldur's Gate. That also means that Demon's forge tent here is now abandoned, and it will remain that way, allowing us to pick up the goods he left behind, and luckily there are no Druids anywhere nearby that could spot us doing so. The stuff is technically marked as stealing, but I don't think anyone will miss it, and as the final item we pick up here, it includes a +1 breastplate, a pretty decent early game medium armor that we are now giving to Shadowheart. Not only does this get rid of her stealth disadvantage, but it also boosts her AC up to a respectable 20. At this point though, our business here in the Druid Grove is done. Next destination, the Underdark. Its entrance rumored to be somewhere inside the Shattered Sanctum.
The goblins will be out for blood after what happened at the Grove.
Leftover rats cornered in their hole. They can still cause trouble for us though.
Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that, considering we slaughtered each and every one of them. But of course, if we hadn't, we might now have some explaining to do. As it stands, as we enter the Shattered Sanctum once more, we gain 15 XP, and our journal entry to travel through the Underdark has also been updated, even though we haven't really made much progress in terms of finding the entrance. By the way, quick fun fact, despite everything that happened so far, Saza is still here. Sadly though, she does not have any unique comments on the events that transpired, so instead we now make our way into the private chambers of Priestess Gut, and once we are inside, we head in an eastern direction. This is about as far as we've come in our earlier exploration of the place. Back then, we stopped in front of this doorway right here. This time, however, we want to go through. This chamber is ruined for the most part. A mosaic on the floor in front of us, though, catches our attention. Let's get closer and see what that's all about.
Interlocking circles with moons and stars. This must be the seal mentioned in that journal.
Well then, shall we?
Indeed we shall. If you recall, that journal mentioned something about matching full moons and stars, and casting darkness where it belongs at the bottom. Long story short, what we want to do here is turn these stone discs in such a way that the disc at the bottom, the one that light shines on, has all black circles. All in all, as you can see, this is not overly difficult.
goes very far down. We'll have to go in to see the bottom.
Alright, there we are. Not only has Gale received an inspiration, but a path at the end of the room has been opened. A lever has also been revealed to open and shut the door again. And as we make our way through, we now find ourselves inside of a small rocky tunnel, at the end of which we find a ladder leading straight into the darkness below, one of several possible entrances to the Underdark, but this one we will use.
What others say about the Underdark. It's beautiful down here.
I'm used to a crypt's gloom. This is something else.
Well then, here we are in the Underdark. We have found the Selûnite Outpost. You may recall that this was mentioned by Halsin and the druids in regards to their search of the Night Song. For the moment, we don't see much of the Underdark itself, and before we do, each one of our current party members also has something to say about the place.
You know, for all the time I've spent lurking in the shadows, I've never ventured into the Underdark before. Hardly a luxurious setting, but it definitely has its upsides for a vampire. Or its undersides, because it's... you know what I mean.
The Underdark has a certain menacing beauty to it, though I'll be happier admiring it from a safe distance.
The Underdark. As if we didn't face enough dangers back up on the surface.
And Shadowheart is right, this is certainly going to be a dangerous place. To get us started, we simply explore the temple here. There are a few oil barrels around that we can use to replenish our stock. The gate over by the barrel on the right side here, meanwhile, is locked at the moment, and there is no need to pick it open just yet. We then approach a large statue emitting beams of light near the gate. We'll take a closer look at that in just a second. For now, there is loot to be had, some weapons in the chest, and a spell scroll on the bench. This broken window over here can also serve as an exit out of the temple. On the other side, we can catch a first glimpse of what the Underdark really looks like, but we won't go this way for the time being. Instead, let's loot the remaining crates nearby, pick up another oil barrel, and then we can read through a curious book placed on the statue's pedestal. Talking about the Night Song, the book describes it as incredibly difficult to track down, with the latest lead pointing towards an old fortress of Shar near the Moonrise Towers. Well, what a coincidence that that's where we're trying to go. For now though, after quickly looting a few more crates and burlap sacks, let's approach the currently locked temple gate. This triggers a unique encounter with a Minotaur. Best we keep our distance from the gate it's approaching, even though we now also learn what those light beams are for, a defense mechanism that we don't actually want to see come to fruition. So we enter turn-based mode to take a closer look at the situation. The Minotaur already spawns with only about a third of its health. After taking a few blasts from the gate defenses, it now sits at 25 hit points. A quick glance at its character sheet, however, reveals that at full health this is a formidable opponent, and therefore one that we should expect a good reward from for killing it ourselves. In order to do that though, we first need to disable the gate defenses, easily achieved by shooting the moonstone at the top of the statue here. Since we just disabled a Selûnite protection, this also grants Shadowheart an inspiration, but of course we now have a raging Minotaur standing at the other side of the gate, so it's probably a good idea to prepare for combat. Now, turn-based mode we can actually disable at this point. As you can see, the gate is extremely sturdy. It has various damage resistances and a damage threshold too, so it will take a long time until the Minotaur will actually deal enough damage to destroy it. We use this freedom to put our entire party out of the way onto the high ground and into stealth mode, while Astarion is the only one who remains down near the gate, near the lever that opens it, and this is where we want to re-enter turn-based mode. With the rest of our party safely hidden away, we can now pull that lever, but nothing will happen since we are in turn-based mode. Nonetheless, we want to stealth Astarion away from the gate, as that gate will not remain closed for too much longer. Then we end our collective turns and watch the Minotaur rage on, but crucially we also watch the gate open. However, since we are all neatly hidden, we are not yet spotted. Now, thanks to multiclassing as a ranger, Astarion is now also very capable with 2 hand crossbows, just like Sylvia. Their only issue is the range though, which negates the sneak attack in this case. Nonetheless, we have him open combat here, just to ensure our party goes first. That's 7 points of damage, and we can strike a 3rd time now with the Dread Ambusher feat, and that attack delivers with almost maximum damage, 17 points, leaving Sylvia to easily deal with the remaining 1 hit point. And there we go, our entire party earns a respectable 75 XP for killing their first Minotaur, and that's 75 XP that we would have missed out on otherwise had we let the gate defenses do their job. Now, in terms of loot, there is a rather important skeleton at the top of the gate here. Not only does it carry a key for that locked door we went by earlier, but also tattered notes, the last recollections of one of Selûne's followers, tasked with protecting this gate as a last beacon of light down here in the Underdark. Back downstairs then, we can collect a few more bits and pieces scattered around the statue. We can, by the way, return to the surface at any point, for example, if we want to make some trades. Traveling back and forth is also going to be a little bit easier now that we found our first waypoint down here in the Underdark. On the 2 tables, meanwhile, we can find logbooks. The first one here mentions signs of life near the outpost, as well as rumors of a spectator and statues shaped like drow. So, if we happen to come across those statues, we should probably be on high alert, while the second logbook here only has its last entry readable, which expresses regrets of not paying more attention to the drow sightings. Looks like there were many more still lying in wait. Apart from a potion of healing then, the room does not have any further loot worth speaking about. You can see that there is an elevated section with a chest over on this side though, accessible by someone capable of jumping very high, or from the other side perhaps, the gate now unlocked with the key we just found.
What's that?
Astarion is also quick to spot a hidden door that will in fact gain us entrance to that aforementioned section. First of all though, let's have him pick open the lock on the chest right here. Anything below a DC of 25 is rather trivial for him at this point, and so we now gain access to the Helmet of Smiting. Unfortunately though, with smites being a paladin ability, we don't really have much use for it at the moment. Nonetheless, there is more loot to be found if we now open the path through the stone wall here. Although, approaching the chest in this room, we want to be careful of traps.
Oh dear. Someone's left a trap out for us.
Once more, with advantage, a bonus of at least 13 to the roll, and with 4 points of inspiration, disarming this trap is not an overly risky endeavor, and neither is picking open the lock, which presents the same DC of 15. Inside the chest then we find some gold as well as the luminous armor, an AC 15 medium armor that synergizes nicely with people dealing radiant damage. So after looting the rest of the room, we're going to put it on Shadowheart to replace the +1 breastplate we just gave her. At this point then, we are ready to leave. We pick up one last oil barrel on the way, and then we head outside and into the Underdark proper for the very first time. Scattered on and around the stairs, we find the remains of a fight that was previously alluded to. Those remains don't offer anything of value though. The various alchemy ingredients, however, do.
Something over there.
The rocky crevice here then, just another way to get back into the Selûnite Outpost. Like I said earlier, the path we took is not the only one into the Underdark, and the gates of this outpost are of course best opened from the inside, otherwise we'd have to pick them open while being shot at by Selûne's defenses. Speaking of which, the journal here sheds a bit more light onto what Selûne's followers were planning to achieve down here. This outpost, partially at least, the result of one overly eager high initiate, who, in his own words, realized way too late that there are some places the light is just not meant to touch. Apart from that though, the loot in this area is very meager, and the promisingly named Staff of the Moon Maiden is just a regular quarterstaff. It does not carry any special magical properties, and yet we'll pick it up before we then collect some weaponry on the other side of the barricade here. Down by the western end of the stairs then we find another journal, which describes its author's trust in the High Initiate and his plans. Sadly though, standing over lots of skeletons tells us what became of those plans.
These fungal spores are everywhere.
As we collect a few more bits and pieces, Sylvia then remarks on fungal spores in the air, and as we now set out to head across the walkway to the west here, we see them in full effect.
More are coming.
Who? What in the hells are you?
They're coming. They're coming.
Right, we hear a mysterious voice in our heads. Admittedly, that's not the first time that happened. This voice, however, seems different from the others, and it appears that the rest of our party can hear it too.
No, someone's coming. And someone else wants us to know.
They are coming. You are coming.
Right, and with this not at all unsettling warning, we have no other choice but to venture forth. The spores actually also show up as a status effect here, allowing affected creatures to communicate with each other telepathically. For now at least though, we are out of the fungal cloud, so things remain quiet, and after picking up some more alchemy ingredients, we have something else to focus our attention on, a glowing sword prominently embedded into a rock here. And for what comes next, we want to make sure to switch to Gale.
A slender drow blade impales the stone before you, keeping a silent vigil.
Now we switch to Gale because he has the highest religion modifier in our entire party. Admittedly, a high strength character would also work, but we don't have one with us at the moment. So let's see if the bonus of at least +5 is enough to help us pass the DC of 15.
This blade was a warrior's sacrifice to Elis Stray. Blood can only be honored with blood.
Right, so at this point the task is simple. We need to shed some blood onto the stone. A few drops will thankfully suffice.
The drow script inscribed on the blade flickers and glows. It rises from the stone, hanging in the air in silent offering.
So, there we are, one more inspiration for Shadow Hearts, and we have just obtained Fala Luve, at least that is how I think it is pronounced, a magic +1 longsword which can actually be extremely powerful, not only because unlike other longswords it has the finesse tag, so it can also be used by dex-based characters, but also because of its melody ability which allows the sword to sing or shriek. Sing is essentially a slightly worse area of effect version of Bless, while Shriek comes with some of the abilities that we know from the Bane spell, in addition to an extra d4 thunder damage to all affected creatures. We are probably going to see some creative and very powerful uses of this weapon down the line. For now though, we have to take note of one more fact that I hope you don't take offense to, because Gale here actually just lost 1 hit point from spilling blood onto the stone, the first official point of damage we've taken in a long while. However, as far as I'm aware, you don't actually get the inspiration for just pulling the sword out of the stone, so this was necessary and at the same time done completely voluntarily, which is why I think it is fair game. Now, moving on, we can also use Gale to harvest these nightlights here. Each one requires a successful DC 12 nature check. Gale has a bonus of +7, so he is once more the character best suited for the job.
Gods! What's happening?
Right, the Underdark is shaking. An earthquake down here would obviously have catastrophic consequences, and as we proceed further, yet another potential danger emerges.
That wasn't a Bulette, was it?
So, something just burrowed along underneath our feet. A successful nature check lets Sylvia suspect a Bulette, although that doesn't really help us prepare for whatever this creature may be. It is safe to say, though, that we might want to switch to a more combat-capable squad, so let's make some preparations and visit our Underdark campsite for the very first time. Overgrown with mushrooms big and small, the place is actually quite cozy. Once more, all of our companions have their own little tents, and we now swap out Gale and Shadowheart in favor of Will and Karlach. Will also looks a little bit different, now sporting the poisonous robe, mostly for stylistic reasons though. The Gloves of Power then could potentially boost his melee attacks, and he needs a shield, the Absolute's Warboard, one of the best we have at the moment. As always, we're also going to have Will summon the Shadowblade and bind to it as his packed weapon, and with that we also somewhat needlessly waste our first short rest of the episode, just so he gets back to 2 spell slots.
Freshened up and ready to fight.
And with that, we are ready to roll. Let's introduce Will and Karlach to the Underdark now too.
Hey, what's on your mind, Astarion? You seemed a million miles away just then.
Oh, I was just pondering that heart of yours. There were times I would have been thrilled if everyone who put their hands on me burst into flames.
I'd trade you if I could.
Right, a little sweet conversation here between Astarion and Karlach. At this point, we quickly grab the Viridian Crystal over here and then shortly after enter stealth mode. Because, surprise surprise, we have an enemy up ahead, no Bulette, but a Minotaur, and this one is still at full health. It is also patrolling along a narrow rocky bridge, so it's best we take the path over to the left here to loop around. We are sending Astarion up first with the hunting shortbow re-equipped. Minotaurs are monstrosity-type enemies after all, so this ensures he gets advantage without having to sneak.
Broken bones. Must have fallen.
Indeed they have. These are the 2 face spiders from the Matriarch's lair. And unfortunately, just like they came in a pair, so do the Minotaurs, which brings us to phase 1 of our plan here, patience. While it may initially look like their patrol routes keep them fairly separated, if we just wait it out, we will inevitably get to a point where they get close to each other, and not only that, they will also both have their back turned to us. At this point then, we can use Astarion's full movement range to sneak up behind them, and we should not only be able to land a sneak attack here, but hopefully also gain surprise for the first round of combat. Alright, there we are, 12 points of damage to start things off. Not too much, considering our enemies have a combined 234 hit points, and before we continue, we also want to take note of one particular strategic implication, as the Minotaur in the front here is in fact resistant to slashing damage, but vulnerable to bludgeoning. Now admittedly, for our plan, this vulnerability won't really come into play. Most other notable features here only impact the Minotaur's offensive capabilities, which I really hope we will not get to experience. So, time for Astarion's second strike, but first let's use his bonus action to cast Hunter's Mark, and then we can use the Dread Ambusher attack here to finish Astarion's first round of combat. That's 15 points of damage, a solid start, and crucially, the rest of our party has not yet entered the initiative, and with the Minotaur's backs turned to us, we can now safely sneak Sylvia up onto the high ground on top of the mushrooms here, and unleash a slashing flourish, all at the same enemy. That's 27 points of damage, lovely, but we have her bonus action still, so let's use that too. Unfortunately though, the 85% misses. Up next then, we bring Karlach around, pretty much the same procedure with her. Up onto the high ground she goes, and then we throw the returning pike. And there we go, Sylvia's miss is made up for with a critical worth 25 points of damage. Since Karlach is officially in combat now, we can also put her into a frenzy. And then we're going to move her ever so slightly to get a throwing angle at the second Minotaur. The first one I think has taken enough damage for now. Right, seems like we could use a bit more luck in this fight as Karlach misses a 95%er, but those are the events that you have to prepare for, and overall I think our plan is still in place, as fourth and finally Will now joins the fight by casting Hunger of Hadar, which is going to shroud these 2 Minotaurs in darkness and will also have them take damage at the beginning and at the end of their turns, which is why it is a great spell to cast while enemies are surprised, as they are guaranteed to spend the entire turn within the spell's area of effect. What's even better, after joining the initiative, as you can see, Will still has his action left. I think it's because the spell did not deal any damage and so he was just detected, but not through performing a harmful act. I can't quite explain it. Once again, the stealth mechanics in this game still elude me from time to time. Either way, at this point, let's end our first turn of combat. That will then trigger the Hunger of Hader to do damage for the first time, but unfortunately both Minotaurs save against it, so they only take a small amount of cold damage, but no acid damage. Nonetheless, we now find ourselves in the lucky position of being able to cast Fireball with Will on turn 1. Normally the plan would have been to use this on the second turn. It doesn't actually make too much difference in terms of the action economy. It's not like Will has a third spell slot to use, but he was able to deal some good damage against the Minotaur going before him in the initiative. On this next turn then, surprise wears off and we still have a combined 100 plus hit points to remove. Our enemies are blinded, but at the same time we have to fire into darkness, so those two effects unfortunately cancel each other out. Nonetheless, the high ground gives us enough of a boost to hit chance, and from now on we focus on the enemy further in the back, the one that goes first in the initiative. We deal a further 27 points of damage and can shoot once more with Sylvia's offhand. I had some confusion with the displayed hit chances, that's why Sylvia is moving around a bit. Ultimately though, she lands a critical hit to end her turn. And just like that, the fight suddenly looks very manageable. We move on then with Karlach. One bonus action Enraged Throw already deals 26 points of damage and knocks the Minotaur prone, and we can still throw 2 more times, which with a bit of luck will finish both enemies off. Minotaur number 1, however, remains standing here with only 2 hit points. Let's see how lucky the other one is. And that's 2 hit points remaining on that one as well, so it shouldn't be too difficult for Astarion now to finish the job. After all, thanks to the hunting shortbow, he gets advantage against both enemies. The first kill here earns us a further 75 XP, and conveniently enough it also allows us to access Will in the initiative now, who can now cancel the Hunger of Hader, so that Astarion can safely move in for the melee strike.
Cram that awful thing into your chest.
Thing is, I can touch devils and the like back in Avernus. I never did, because I'm not a masochist. But I could have.
Gods, I'm glad you got out of there.
With my new best friend on my tail the whole time. Who knew?
So then, here we are, our first proper fight down here in the Underdark is done, the 2 Minotaurs lie dead and we can get to looting, and we're using Astarion for this because there are more nightlights in the area, and after Gale, Astarion has the second highest nature score in the party.
Spent much time in the Underdark?
Some. And you? Seems a perfect hunting ground for...
Perfect. You tried drinking an earth element's blood.
Once more then, the Underdark prompts a few more discussions between our party members. And indeed, with the Minotaurs now dealt with, we have a few moments here to catch our breath. In a small rocky outcropping then, we can find a crushed body, although nothing of spectacular wealth can be looted from it. We then follow that small rocky bridge that the first Minotaur patrolled on. 2 more nightlights can be found at the beginning. Astarion sadly fails the nature check to loot the second. Thankfully though, the Chasm Creeper and the Rogue's Morsel up ahead don't require any checks at all. At this point we have looped back around to the Minotaurs. The first one here carries the Amulet of the Unworthy, the source of that aforementioned slashing resistance, but it comes with the penalty of bludgeoning vulnerability, so it remains an item with rather situational usefulness. Apart from that, the 2 monstrosities don't carry anything crazy. All in all, the majority of the loot that can be found in this first section of the Underdark is alchemy ingredients, but fairly useful ones. After all, Rogue's Morsel is a core ingredient in healing potions, and the Swarming Toadstool can be used to make the very potent Drow poison. This reminds me that I was actually planning on showing you some alchemy soon. Up until now, it simply wasn't necessary, but it is an aspect of the game that I do want to cover, of course. Now, after reaching this point of the map here, we want to go solo with Astarion for a moment.
Oh dear. Someone's left a trap out for us.
Just to avoid having anyone else step onto the traps on the ground. That trap, and a few more like it actually, block the path towards a net that we can use to scale the wall over here, but as you can see, it's not too difficult to loop around. Well, for Astarion that is, not necessarily for his cat summon. This is a pretty decent use for the Find Familiar spell though. If you want to, you can just have them run into traps for you. Considering the number that we can now summon with each short rest, that is actually a viable method, and it can save you some tedious trap disarming. Now, to avoid the rest of our party stepping onto these traps here, we will go solo with Astarion for the next few moments. Once again, the Underdark is shaking, but we have just found a storehouse, and hopping the crates here we can get inside. The existence of this storehouse, of course, points towards the presence of more intelligent life. Life that has apparently left behind a decent chunk of valuables, although curiously they are all more or less unprotected, so whoever owns this storehouse has either abandoned it already, or they were hoping that it would be too difficult to find and access in the first place. The still very much active traps near the entrance point towards the latter. We'll find out more in just a moment. For now, let's pick open the first of several locked chests in this area. The DC of 10 here, of course, no trouble for Astarion, and the chest then contains some weapons, so not just harmless trade goods. There are, of course, more valuables to be found in the crates and boxes nearby. The sheer variety of it makes it difficult to pinpoint a clear purpose, but Astarion soon picks up on something that lets us identify the owner.
The Black Network's mark. Spies, murderers, and thieves ahead, I guess.
The Black Network are of course none other than the Zhentarim, who we already had our dealings with near Waukeen's Rest, and who you may recall had an elevator deep within their hidden cave hideout, an elevator protected no less by an illusory wall. Their hideout below Waukeen's Rest was already pretty secretive and well protected, so it does make some sense for them to use an Underdark storehouse, and what we've learned about the Zhentarim so far also does not make me feel too bad about stealing from them now. Just like Astarion mentioned a few moments ago, they are not just harmless traders, but also spies, thieves, and murderers. As such, it pays off to be on high alert and to have a perceptive character with you as you explore the storehouse, and luckily for us, Astarion is just that.
Be careful. There are traps about.
Case in point, this next chest here is trapped, but only with a DC of 15, nothing our resident vampire spawn can't crack. For the lock itself then, only a DC 10 sleight of hand check is required. For Astarion, that's equal to an automatic success. Inside the chest then we find a grand total of 5 spell scrolls, 2 for Speak with Dead and 3 for Force Life. Perhaps not the most frequently utilized spells, but they should at least fetch a good price if we decide to sell them. At this point, you can also see it already, we have reached the elevator, an elevator that, crucially, we repaired when we visited the Zhentarim hideout, otherwise it would now be inaccessible to us from down here. Finally then, another locked chest reveals a few more throwables that can be useful in combat, and apart from a few more minor bits and pieces that I don't think I need to show you, that's it. So let us now have the rest of our party jump up to the storehouse as well to join Astarion, so that for the sake of true completion we can use the elevator together. And there we are, inside of the Zhentarim hideouts with the second way into the Underdark explored. As you can see, the wolf Istor is still guarding the pathway to this elevator, and the rest of the hideout, as well as the people in it, also haven't changed much. Yes, there is a trader down here, but we did already purchase everything of value from him, so I think we can safely take the elevator back down immediately, which also treats us to a beautiful cutscene about the place that we'll spend the next few episodes in. So there we are, back in the storehouse, and as we head back out, I think we have time for one more thing in today's episode. There is one more very powerful enemy that I would like to show you. It was already alluded to earlier. It can show up in multiple places, but we already crossed one of those safely, so it is very likely to show up in this next one here, a pathway leading below the place where we picked up Fala Eluve.
Timasks, known to cause confusion. Best not get too close.
First of all, though, it's a good idea to deal with some local fungi. These Timasks here, while not directly harming a character, can still be dangerous. As you can see, they can inflict the befuddled status effect, which will lead to a character wandering around uncontrollably. As you can imagine, with danger nearby, this can be potentially lethal.
You know, Karlach, there are other ways to express love beyond run-of-the-mill physicality.
Are you going to try and teach me about exceptional uses for a mage hand, or what?
Well, actually, I was thinking of poetry.
Oops, sorry. But, now that I think of it, is Mage Hand especially hard to learn?
Right, following this short conversation then, you may have noticed that Gale and Shadowheart are back in the party. One important piece of equipment for Gale for this next encounter is the hunting shortbow for advantage against monstrosity-type enemies, while Shadowheart over here comes equipped with Fala Eluve, the Absolute's Warboard, and the Bow of Awareness, just to give her a slight but very important edge in the initiative order. We also want to take note of the focused stride feature granted by her boots, because as long as Shadowheart is concentrating on a spell, she cannot be knocked prone. So, what we want to do here is go solo with Shadowheart, then have her cast Guidance on herself, which is a concentration spell, and then we just have her follow the path to the north in front of us. All of a sudden then we enter turn-based mode, the game does this all on its own, and it looks like we have something burrowing through the ground behind Shadowheart. Now Sylvia already mentioned the possible presence of a Bulette earlier this episode, during a section where something very similar looking burrowed along the path right next to us. This time, however, it very much looks like we have something about to emerge here, so in order to prepare for this emergence, let's put down a Glyph of Warding with Shadowheart. The damage type does not really matter too much, we are going with fire, and then we run away as far as possible. With Karlach, Gale and Shovel meanwhile, we make sure to stay far away from the action too. Karlach and Gale can both hide and Shovel is invisible already. The only one actually doing something on this turn is Sylvia, who will move up a bit here and then summon Zombie Connor with the second marriage. For our plan to work, it is important that we put Connor between Shadowheart and the burrowing hole. At the same time, though, we also want to make sure not to put him too close to Shadowheart, so that she does not get caught up in whatever happens next. Then we move Sylvia back with the others and end our turn, saving Shadowheart for last. Let's see what we've got coming up here. Alright, there we are, the Bulette is here. And part 1 of our plan has worked like a charm. Connor is almost dead, but Shadowheart has not taken a single point of damage. Now stats-wise, the Bulette is a respectable foe with an AC of 17 and 162 hit points. Apart from strength and constitution, however, its stats are not all that great, something worth keeping in mind. It is also resistant to non-magical slashing, piercing and bludgeoning damage, but all the weapons we actually use are magical at this point, so this won't affect us too much. What should, however, affect us a great deal, and I'm not quite sure why it doesn't, are the Bulette's diamond scales. As you can see, as a result of this being honor mode, the Bulette has a legendary action here, but that legendary action depends on something that is normally supposed to happen, and that would be the Bulette starting out with diamond scales, an extra 100 temporary hit points and complete damage immunity to any attack below 15 points of damage. Now, as you may have noticed, our Bulette here does not have these diamond scales active, even though it is supposed to start with them. I don't know why, I've done a rigorous amount of testing, which is why this video is likely also the only one we'll have this week. As you can clearly see by the presence of this legendary action, honor mode is very much active, and I do realize that this unfortunately makes one of the toughest bosses in Act 1 a whole lot easier. Still, I can't seem to change it, so I suppose we'll have to deal with it. I've made a copy of my save file just in case, because I saw this happening in testing too. Should I find some way of getting the diamond scales to work after all, I will gladly replay the fight. Please let me know in the comments if you have any ideas what might cause this. For now at least, we have no other choice but to deal with the situation at hand. The strategy for this fight thankfully does not change too much. Sylvia, Karlach and Gale start things off outside of combat, and Sylvia summons both a mage hand and Connor. The former might be necessary to throw a speed potion if what comes next does not work initially. The latter is just resummoned, mostly because we can, and because I was hoping that we might see an improvement in his initiative. Sadly though we didn't, and he's still placed after the Bulette. Final preparations then, while we are still outside of combat, we dip our melee weapons in fire, and then we prepare to cast Bane on the Bulette, which requires a charisma saving throw, and as you saw earlier, its charisma is absolutely abysmal with a score of 5. Now, this is technically not necessary, but it makes the next step a bit easier, because with a d4 penalty to saving throws, we will now have Shadowheart cast Command Grovel. The success chance here is actually greater than the displayed 70%, and if it succeeds, the Bulette will fall prone and be essentially forced to waste its turn. And there we go. Had this not succeeded, that's what the Mage Hand would have been for. Throwing a speed potion at Shadowheart would have allowed her to try again. The Bulette, meanwhile, can now no longer take actions, bonus actions or reactions, and being prone, melee attacks against it are also made with advantage. And even if it had diamond scales, this is in my opinion a very good opening move for this fight. Up next then we bring in Gale, who, as you recall, still has the hunting shortbow equipped, and thus he's about to get advantage on a level 3 Scorching Ray, 4 projectiles, all also launched with high ground advantage. Now, unfortunately, he misses twice, but with one critical hit, a grand total of 20 damage is still dealt. With diamond scales, I recommend throwing water at the Bulette to make it wet and then using a level 3 Witch Bolt instead. Lightning attacks deal double damage to wet creatures, so an attack like this is pretty much guaranteed to bypass diamond scale's 15 damage threshold. Up next then we have Karlach. Things are pretty straightforward with her as always. We throw the returning pike and hit for 14 points of damage. With diamond scales active, I think Lae'zel actually makes more sense than Karlach. A menacing or trip attack with the Everburn blade has a pretty decent chance of bypassing the 15 damage threshold too. As you can see though, Karlach is no slouch either, especially once she's raging. I think she hits for below 15 damage only once in this fight, and on the next turn she can start throwing the spear 3 times. Now to end our turn, let's summon a spiritual weapon with Shadowheart. This will allow us to just get a tiny bit of extra damage, and with Sylvia we can still use her bonus action for an offhand melee attack, made with advantage and dealing 10 further points of damage, bringing the Bulette down to exactly half health. This then brings us to the Mage Hand, which again was summoned just in case we needed the speed potion. Let's have it attack too, but the outcome is as expected. The Bulette then wastes its turn thanks to the command spell. It is now unfortunately no longer prone, and with an AC of 17 it is no surprise that both Connor and the spiritual weapon miss their attacks. Now, depending on how much health the creature has left at this point, you have several options. If you feel like you need another turn after this, then using Command Grovel a second time would be my recommendation. Once again, if that fails, a speed potion can be used to try again. Groveling or not does not have any impact on Karlach though, so we'll have her go first before we decide anything else. Knocking the Bulette prone can easily also be achieved by using the Enraged Throw, and not just that, it also deals 27 points of damage. She can now throw twice more, the next attack deals 21 points of damage, and with that the Bulette is almost defeated already. Attack number 3 deals a further 18, even starting with diamond scales, those should no longer be a concern at this point, as we now already prepare for the final blow. I decided to once again give the Mage Hand a try. Shovel goes next, attacking from stealth with advantage, which results in 2 further points of damage. Since the Bulette is prone, Sylvia also strikes with advantage, 1 hit, 1 miss, and so we are now left with 1 meager hit point. How about we try a Sacred Flame? Baned and prone, our success chances here are great. And there we go, we have killed ourselves a Bulette and earn 150 XP for our efforts. Once again, as we loot the body for the Blood Guzzler garb here, I'm sorry that I was not able to show you this encounter in its full scale. I think the overall approach would have remained largely the same, and again, if I can somehow get the diamond scales to work after releasing this video, then I will gladly try and show you how to deal with those too. For now though, we can move on and loot the area, using Gale for this, mostly because of the 2 night lights on the left here once again requiring nature checks. Eventually then we approach the northern end of this platform. As you can see, there is a small gap that we need to jump to get over to the other side. As soon as we do, another nature check is made.
Timask and torch stalks. Hell of a combination. Get confused by one, blown up by the other.
And those few lines by Shadowheart do in fact summarize the threat nicely. We definitely do not want to take one step further before clearing out this patch. Should we somehow come under the befuddled status effect, these torch stalks here present a lethal threat, so we make sure to clear them all out before we proceed. Up next then we take a short detour towards a northeastern direction. this will in fact lead us back towards the secret Zhentarim storehouse, but taking this path presents us with the opportunity to collect a few more alchemy ingredients and to also find some hidden treasure.
That might be worth a look.
The chest we dig up then has a few spell scrolls and consumables in it, and there is also a second chest hidden a bit further in the back. As we access it, our party also triggers another Tim mask, but they all make the save and there are no explosive mushrooms nearby anyway. At this point then, we retrace our steps and head back down, and as we cross the former mushroom field that we just cleared out, we see some creatures standing on the other side.
You are swallowed by a chorus of turbulent music. Through one creature sing many voices, the harmony of an entire collective.
Sovereign, she has come. She is here.
The choir fades. A single melody rises above the others, brassy and commanding.
I am sovereign.
You see a vision. Your lifeless body wrapped in fungal tendrils. The Sovereign is threatening you.
State your purpose.
Right, looks like we have found ourselves a colony of Myconids, and instead of rolling any checks here or revealing the nature of our parasite, let's just go with the Bard option.
You detect a distinct quiver in every note. These creatures have experienced recent tragedy.
Thanks to the Bard option, we learn a bit more here. Let's use that information to state that we're here to help, which also grants us approval from Shadowheart and Karlach.
Fungal roots weave through your mind, seeking your true intent. Then the Sovereign drones a new melody, cautious but welcoming.
Descend to me. Let us speak in flesh.
The persistent music coaxes you forward. The Sovereign expects you.
And there we go, the Myconids head deeper, likely into the heart of their colony, a colony that we now find ourselves at the gates of, and I think this discovery makes for a pretty good point to make the cut in today's episode. Next time then, we'll see what plagues these fungal creatures. Until then, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, even if its big boss fight did not quite go as intended, but if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course also go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.